The South African Police Service and Interpol have been lauded following recent breakthroughs in the country. A 46-year-old Israeli gang leader was nabbed in Bryanston this week after being on the run for 15 years. A person wanted in Ireland for a double murder has also been tracked down to a local prison. Well, for more on transnational crime in the country, we're joined by criminal law expert Ian Allis. Ian, good evening to you. Thank you so much for coming into studio. Look, the police have made no secret about how big a deal it is for them that they were able to bring these suspects into custody. But let's talk a little bit about what it really takes to track down individuals that have such sophisticated machinery and clearly no shortage of resources to help them move around.
Well, that unfortunately is the problem, Kathy, and what attracts them to the country to begin with, because in reality, when you've got the problems and the corruption and that type of level, it becomes a treasure cove for international syndicates. They know that the police are strapped for resources. They know that there's a high level of corruption, and that actually has gone ahead and assisted so much in being able to become more attractive for this type of an individual to actually come in. And because there's also, if one could say, a lack of true enforcement, because they come in under false names and false ID documents and false passports and visas, they almost go undetected. And the border controls are very ineffective at this present moment, as has been seen in the past. And with the level of further corruption at higher levels, it's made it very difficult for the police to in actual fact track it with their limited resources, which is why something like this, where they've nabbed and they found these people in relative quick succession, if one could actually say, is quite admirable from that perspective, because it's been a struggle for the police as of late.
It comes in a week where Shamila Batoy was in Parliament, and she was talking about the fact that crime intelligence in the country has not been making progress in organized crime. So this may well be a bit of a boost, but does it show a difference in as far as improvements at all within our criminal intelligence system?
Unfortunately not. You know, it's not quite at the stage of even a blind squirrel will find a nut. At the end of the day, we've got a huge problem, and they're under-resourced. Our crime intelligence is also under a lot of investigations, come under a lot of suspicion in its own right, bearing in mind the history and all of that, and all of the charges that have got, I wouldn't say necessarily criminal charges, but all the investigations and questions that have come over the individuals that have in actual fact been deployed into that department, and the fact that their results have not in fact been particularly good as far as a history goes. They have been, if one could say, mediocre at best.
We know they have a new head, General Shadrack Sibiya. Do you think that's going to make a difference?
Only time will tell. It's not just the short-term nabbings that go ahead and make the big difference. It's basically what is going to be the long-term effects and what is going to be the long-term convictions at the end of the day. And will his record stand up, and will he get those convictions and the arrests that are needed to go to establish himself as the top of that department?
Let's talk then about the kind of arms that were also found in this operation. I think one article today in the Sunday papers terming it as, you know, the gang bosses being armed to the teeth. So no shortage there. It does say a lot about the problem of arms proliferation in the country.
Well, the second problem is I was looking with the AK-47s and the assault rifles and the fully automatic arms. Now, there's two things. Where did those actually come from? Were they smuggled in illegally, or have they been stolen through military and police? Unfortunately, that's also been a trend as of late, has been the robberies of police stations and of the military units. Those were heavy, hardcore assault rifles. That's ready for a war. Those guys were armed to a better extent than our police in actual fact are.
Andy Mashaile is the Interpol Ambassador and Security Advisor. He joins us as part of this conversation. Andy, these suspects in particular had been wanted for a number of years. We understand that the Israeli gang leader himself has been in the country since around 2007. It's a long time to stay under the radar.
Good evening to you, Sis Kathy, the viewers. Yes, it is quite a very, very long time. This gentleman driving up and down our streets, going to our shopping centers to buy, without us having had identified him, without us having had picked him up. One of those weaknesses would be communication between Interpol Tel Aviv, or the Tel Aviv National Central Bureau of Interpol. Them sharing information with the Pretoria National Central Bureau, that is Interpol in Pretoria. The third other thing that I suspect would be the reason why we couldn't pick him up, the tall walls that you and I have seen, and the neighbors that don't know who's living next door. But I'm glad that ultimately, after many years, the bureaus or the countries that would be Israel and South Africa were able to find common ground. Not that there was no common ground, but I'm just happy that there was common ground. Ultimately, this suspect on the red notice was nabbed at that point in time, 4 a.m. in the morning, and for us having pulled in your special task force means that there was enough and credible information and intelligence that were shared between the two countries and the two bureaus, so that they can enable our local enforcement agencies, that would be your crime intelligence, that would be your Interpol mission, that would be your special task force and SAPS, and all those who are leading the law enforcement agencies.
Let's talk about this conversation as it relates to transnational crime. Because number one, it's the discovery of these suspects, but it comes, just a couple of weeks after this country was dealing with a warning of a terror threat that was likely to hit Sandton in Gauteng. Of course, again, it brings to the forefront the conversation around the types of criminals potentially that we could be harboring, and also how South Africa is being flagged for being a country that is used to channel funds, sometimes even to terrorist organizations.
Ma'am, it is a real challenge that we happen to be, you and I happen to be in Johannesburg now, particularly around the areas of your Sandton, your Hyde Parks. This is where most of the foreign nationals, be them Europeans, be them Asians, be them Lebanese, be them the Israeli, be them from the UK and all over the world, Brazil, Mexico, and all other areas. They come to this area because when you speak to some of them, Sis Kathy, they will tell you that your constitution is actually wonderful. It protects us. Even if we commit crime, there's nothing that your law enforcement agencies will do, or your law enforcement officers can do to us like in other areas. We won't be beaten here. We will get the number of meals that we expect, and adding on to that would be the issue of bribes. Those people who are supposed to be enforcing the law at your police stations, at your correctional services centers, would be easy targets and would be vulnerable in the safety and security and policing system. What do I mean vulnerable? They would be the people that are easy to bribe and they look away instead of nabbing this dangerous suspect. And I believe, when I was Kathy, if we were to use the necessary state of technology to ensure that the latest tools and gadgets are used in the identification of people. Imagine, Kathy, when you and I pass through a roadblock, the police would look for your license and look for your disc. I haven't been asked to put my hand on the Morpher Touch, on the MCD, on the next generation policing project app that I saw somewhere else, where this app or the morpher touch will then indicate that this man is a wanted suspect. Interpol has a system referred to as I-247. When a car is stolen here and the VIN number is punched in on that system, it's easy for Interpol to say, we know this car is wanted in Canada, and we know this car comes from Nigeria, we know this car comes from this or that particular place it's stolen. Imagine if we were to use that technology, Kathy, at on Rivonia Road, between Rivonia and Sentin, you would be finding roadblocks. Most of the time they're either JMPD or SAPS. We would be in a position to say, put your thumb or put your hands on this device. It will tell us through your I-247 that this person is a fugitive from justice, from Israel, from Japan, from Asia, from China, from all those parts of the world.
So our technology really needs to be keeping up here. Ian, let me bring you back into the conversation. Which are the areas or sectors that you think our officials need to be paying closer attention to?
Well, first of all, our Home Affairs Department has come under extreme scrutiny from a corruption point of view. Our police services are known for their corruption. The fact is, and I can agree with what Andy has said, is the extent of the police actually being if one could almost say the protectors through corruption and through bribery for the individuals is well known. Our borders are also very, very lax as far as it goes, and overall, once you've got, it's a domino effect. Once the person is in there, they can start controlling. It's like a cancer that actually grows. Once they've gotten in with the corrupt police officials, they know where to get further information, and that's where they can go ahead and start securing their routes for what they're going to be actually aiming for, be it guns, drugs, human trafficking, whatever it is. Once those channels are opened, along the way they will find the person. So it's not one individual department. It's everything. It's the whole hierarchy throughout the justice system, throughout the police service, and throughout the government sectors that need to go ahead and monitor this, as well as crime intelligence, which I do disagree with certain things that Andy did go ahead and say. It's not up for the public to start busting their neighbours. They don't even know who their neighbours are. The problem is why is this information not being shared? And the man has been staying here for almost 15 years. How is it not being known for that period of time? Are they that ineffective, or is it a corruption issue?
Does this indicate to criminal syndicates that are operating even within an office like Home Affairs? Because we can all agree on the fact that the identification that he may have used to come into this country was really the main key. That was the gateway. Precisely.
And how did he procure? It's not just procuring overseas. It's by procuring the channel inside so that they know that it was prepared. There is that preparation that goes in, that someone's told somebody who is going ahead and coming in, and to make sure that somehow the person walks through undetected. Even with the most advanced of forgeries and counterfeit visas and passports and all of that kind of thing, there are elements to go to check, and these people are visible throughout the Interpol system. So in reality, that is where your corruption starts. Your corruption starts by your, if I could almost say, by your promoters, by the people who have got the contact in there and are looking to make that quick buck, and then it goes and expands. And by the end of the day, you take a look. Then that's where, depending on whether it's for drugs or arms, that's where the channel will come through. But also, the location is also key, because it's because of the routes that it actually enables worldwide. Similarly, smuggling is a very simple concept for organized crime. It's where the certain countries that are most beneficial for a route and for lawlessness actually can reign supreme.
Andy, how do police make sure that they keep up this momentum?
Let me start off by saying, having listened to my brother in the studio say what he has to say, I just want to indicate to you that the police in this country, local law enforcement agencies, have a challenge in terms of containing individuals of this nature. They do also have a challenge in terms of identifying these individuals. Amongst others, the agents at Home Affairs, your agents, those who are working amongst others at places like your VFS Global in Rivonia, those who recruit foreign nationals, and they pay people in the system, and people in the system would produce your fake documents, and those fake documents would be the documents used by these individuals. In the last few months that I spent in Sentin, having stayed there for 12 months just to do a study and research, I have seen a queue of people at that VFS Global, which is an agency between those who are in this country with documents and Home Affairs, those who need to apply for their documents to get to the homes and into South Africa. What I have observed when I went to that place, there are people of Chinese origin who could not even speak English. Instead of following the queue, they would jump the queue. Some person from the inside would come to the door and they would skip the queue and go up, and I don't know what would transpire there, but long story short, the police will always find it difficult if you don't use crime intelligence at those places, if you don't ensure that from your research, from your intelligence gathering, all of your operations are intelligence driven. The name of the game is intelligence, intelligence, intelligence. If it were business, we would be saying big data as well as small data. Bring them together. Bring me the data so that we can then be able to crunch when we sit at the police station or when we sit at the war room or the fusion center. We crunch it and it will tell us of the behaviors of the individuals. Then you can then put up your high profile system that you would then be able to find out who are these guys who are driving the Bentleys and they look like they are not South Africans. How are they able to buy the C63s, the G63s that we have seen around Sentin, Morningside? And when you look at the people and listen to them, you realize that these people are visitors. They are not from here. So when we don't think like criminals, we won't be good investigators. So the lesson here would be, or the advice here would be, think like a criminal, act like an investigator.
All right, let's leave it there for tonight. Andy Mashaile, Interpol Ambassador and Security Advisor, Ian Allis, Criminal Law Expert. We'll leave it there for tonight.